Craiku Tojo is an adventurer that starts out as a kid just like Ace had in the actual series. He was just a regular kid living in the Far East. And he had a love for reading, and one day he discovered that he could do magic without Falna just like the adventurers of old. He finds out when he finds one of his aunt's scrolls in the attic and starts messing around with them, but she had actually left it out while cleaning it out. After he accidentally broke her wall with a spell, she said that he had to be instructed on how to use his magic so he doesn't hurt himself or others. He then decided at age 7 that he wanted to be an adventurer when he was older. His mom was strongly against it, but his dad supported him and he taught him how to fight and allowed him to take martial arts lessons. And over time he would take him out on trips to hunt down monsters that were running rampant on the surface. If the creature was too much for him, then he wouldn't allow Craiku to tag along. After about 3 months he started getting the hang of hand-to-hand combat. And discovered that he really enjoyed fighting. One day they stumbled upon a village full of goblins, but instead of his dad wiping them out he wanted Craiku to do it. This was mainly to build his monster fighting skills for the future and to make sure when he does join a familia he doesn't rely too much on his status. At first Craiku struggled with fighting with the goblins, but eventually he figured out his attack patterns and he killed it using a combination of magic and martial arts. For the next year he would visit the forest under the watch of his dad in case something went wrong, and after 6 months every goblin in the forest had been eliminated. He received his Falna on his 8th birthday from his father's god who had been kicked out of Orero. One day his werewolf and half-sister on his mother's side grew more resentful towards him for reasons he didn't understand and started picking on him. His father didn't know at first because she scared him into silence, but he walked in on her beating him up one day and put an end to it. Their mom had been enabling her actions, and she would often blame him for certain things she would do. After this his dad took him to his grandfather's house to stay. He confessed that she'd been doing this to her ever since he learned to use magic, and it got worse after he learned martial arts. She had even stopped him from going to one of his classes and gotten her boyfriend involved and tormented him quite badly, and his mother just stood there and watched. That'll be a story for another day when I tell you about another OC I made. This traumatized him deeply and caused him to have a strong dislike towards injustice. His dad promised to never let this happen to him again. His father lost all respect for his mother and he ditched the village immediately, and they went traveling around the world and he was able to heal and got his spirit back. They would spend time helping other people, but then one day discovered a group of adventurers who were misusing their strength to threaten innocent people. For those who read my fanfiction, I think you know where this is going. They had their first encounter with the Evilus outside of Orero and realized that there was no longer many safe places. His father decided to go back to Orero since he was a level 4 at the time so he could get to the bottom of this situation. So they had their contracts released from the god they were bounded to so they could convert. Excited to see the city of Oriaro, his father told him so much about he went there with high expectations, but he quickly found out that it wasn't how it was when his dad was there last time. It was the early years of Orero's dark age and it was chaos on a completely different level. He decided to go to the Loki Familia so the two of them could join, but his dad was ambushed by Valletta who was aiming to kill him, and he told Craiku to run away and not to fight anyone, and so he did. But he was cornered by a group of adventurers who were being led by a cat man, but an archer boy looking for a familia to join tried to save him. But he was immediately overwhelmed since this boy had no Falna, yet all of these men did. Craiku decided that he had enough and actually decided to fight back against them and used a combination of magic and his martial arts to take them down. The archer, despite not having Falna, assisted and used his arrows to disarm the men when their guards were down to give Craiku an easier time beating them. He then heals the archer and they thanked each other as the archer introduced himself as Clover. They were caught by the Genisha Familia who heard the ruckus, but Craiku explained to them what had happened, but his father was among them in rough shape. He actually managed to overcome Valletta, but she fled before he could finish her off, but he was in rough shape. He got pretty friendly with Genisha Familia's captain and her little sister. After they recovered they made it to the Twilight Manor and his dad had started talking to Finn about joining Loki Familia. And although they were willing to accept his dad, Finn and Loki refused Craiku for a certain reason. There was an incident with another kid that recently joined the Loki Familia and she ended up being traumatized by one of the vice captains who was livid with her when she threw a tantrum, and Finn wished to avoid a repeat of that. Unfortunately, Loki, being Loki, had forgotten to tell him before she contracted with his dad, and he was not happy about it. He was sad about not going on adventures with his dad, but the captain of Genisha Familia offered him a place with them. His father was skeptical at first, but he went to their Familia home and Craiku seemed to really like it. Even if he thought their god was really annoying. His father wasn't convinced about it, but he discovered that Clover decided to join the Genisha Familia and realized that they got along well with each other. His half-sister ruined any chances of him having friends, and there's not too many kid adventurers around, so he thought he'd be in good hands but would constantly check on him until he was able to convert again after a year. After realizing what he was capable of and witnessing what Oreros become, he then vowed to use his strength and magical power to grow stronger and find a way to put an end to Evelus's reign of terror once and for all and end the Dark Age, no matter how impossible it seemed. If you want to check out his full story, click the link in the description.